doing it because I wanted to win. I was doing it because I wanted to go through the journey. You know, the experience of it was just incredible.
Where did you finish out of interest?
Well, the first leg we were very, very last. We were 2 weeks behind everybody
Wow.
else because of the issues we had with our skipper. So you can imagine on the day of starting, I don't know if you've ever been down and seen a large race like this start. We've got hundreds and thousands of boats and people down there waiting to see these boats take off, go over the start line. Our skipper took us over the line too early, so we had to turn around, go back and start again. Meanwhile, all the other boats, all our parents, everyone who's friends, had just gone off, and that was a real demotivator because you were suddenly left there on your own.
How long did it take you to get back round then?
Probably another half an hour or so.
Wow, okay.
Because you had to go all the way back, turn round. And then, before we left, I asked for a meeting with Che Blythe and our sponsor, and with one other crew member, because we were concerned about our skipper because we felt he was mentally not quite stable. When we've been out training with him, he would actually get very angry and emotionally disturbed. Anyway, the sponsors so liked him, they said, well, what Che agreed with us is that if we were still concerned by the time we got to Rio, our first stopover, he would have a new skipper and replace him.
So presumably you were starting from...
Started from Southampton, sailing out from Southampton, down to Rio, ran Cape Horn to Hobart in Tasmania, then round to Cape Town in South Africa, and then back to Southampton.
And this was the same route Che had done himself?
Very similar, because it did change with the subsequent races as well, their stopovers. I think it depended on who was sponsoring.
So did he choose that route to make it more difficult for you, or because you'd be going slower, was that an advantage?
Well, going against all the currents and the winds makes it slower and harder, more challenging. Whereas if you're going with the winds like the Whitbread...
Do you know what the difference is? Because you were 9 months, weren't you?
Yes, is it 6 months? Whitbread, but it's not an identical route, so I don't know that you can compare them. We set off, had this bad start, and when we had that bad start, the skipper just went down to the sat-nav table, put his head in his hands and just collapsed. So we had to sail that boat from then on. Meanwhile, the wives of a lot of the guys on the boat were doing some research into this skipper, and it turned out he was a fraud. And so, because of all this trouble with him not really being able to sail, because he claimed he had a yacht master's, but he didn't, and of course that's potentially putting us all in very dangerous
So the
position.
skipper was meant to be the experienced one out of the whole crew, right?
He was meant to be the one that was qualified, interviewed by Che, and actually turned out to be a fraud, which was a real egg on Che's face.
Yes, you'd think an experienced sailor could tell. I'm sure he could tell I had no sailing experience.
Yes, you'd hope so, wouldn't
within
you?
a few seconds, yes.
He was clearly very clever, this skipper. I was head of communications on the boat, so I'd be doing a weekly communication, but also I was the one that went round all the crew and asked them to put their name to a piece that I'd written, which was talking about how we wanted our skipper changed when we got to Rio, and how unhappy we felt and the things that were happening. So everyone put their name to that, except our first mate, because he felt that he might need to be there as a mediator. So I then sent that. We had Inmarsat then, it wasn't the internet.
Right.
And we could
Just
only
like sending
send
a fax,
we had we sent the message, but Che couldn't reply to it because we didn't want to risk the skipper seeing this message coming back. So we then just sort of waited and hoped. And Che did get the message, and when we arrived into Rio 2 weeks later, because this guy, the other thing that Che suggested was the boats try and stay together for safety reasons, but he actually took us further east, more towards South America than South Africa. The others were hugging South African coast, and we just hit the doldrums. And I don't know if you know about the doldrums, but you basically sit there.
There's no wind, yes.
You go nowhere, and it's there's lovely metaphors here, I think, for organisations, when sometimes you hit a doldrum, or you might hit a 40-foot wave and you have to try and get yourself up and over it.
Well, we know the expression. I guess unless you've been through it, it must mean, it must take on a whole new meaning, or deeper meaning for you, having experience. So how long were you sat in the doldrums?
It felt like forever at the time, but probably a few days. And there were times when we were going backwards.
Well, you'd have the current and nothing to combat it. If you got
absolutely. But at that time it was lovely and sunny, so we just did some sunbathing.
And how do you get out of that? Does the wind pick up from somewhere, or you drift into a position where there is some wind?
You try to drift into, you're forever watching the weather patterns. You know, somebody at the nav table has that responsibility to check out the weather patterns, and you look at those every day.
Are you getting the weather sent to you, or you're just having to observe it? So
you listen to the radio.
Okay.
So, you know, you're trying to plot that, and eventually we got ourselves out of that. But long story short, we got to Rio two weeks later than everybody else, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I had to get someone to go and wake up Paul, who was asleep, to come and have a party. And he'd got some 40% proof vodka. And so Che arrives on the boat and takes...
So Paul is...
my husband now, and he was on one of the other, on the cruise.
So they waited for you to catch up, basically?
Oh yes, well I mean basically in each of the ports we stopped at, we were there for probably 6 to 8 weeks. So it was a time for boat maintenance and holiday. We arrived, and the first thing that happened, Che arrived on a dinghy and took the skipper away. And then we had an amazing party and got hugely drunk, so we hadn't had any alcohol apart from at Christmas time on the boat.
No.
But so got this new skipper, and we came first, almost first in the second. So we were 2 weeks behind the first one, almost minutes behind the being first on the second leg. So overall we probably came about, I can't remember now, the 7th or 8th, so it wasn't brilliant. No, but at times we did well. That kind of handicap, yes. Yeah, you know, we knew we could do it.
So do you feel that skipper put your lives at risk by...
Potentially he did, but yeah, I mean there were times.
Did you feel in danger?
No, I felt unhappy more than anything else at times. I think because the bad feeling amongst the crew, and you know, we didn't really gel so well as a team, I don't think, and he was just a very...
And you can't exactly, if there's a situation on that, you can't exactly go for a walk and get away from anyone, can you?
Well, this is it, because I did have there was an issue. This new skipper decided to introduce something called Black Book Session. So every Friday morning, he'd be standing at the steering wheel, so a bit like the chief executive, you know, he's standing up there, you all sit round me, minions, my workers, and now I want you to pick on 1 or 2 people, and we're going to talk about what they did badly in the last week. It was awful. And in the middle of this, he'd suddenly look at me and say, and my nickname was Boozy, because my dad always called me Susie Boozy, and sailors are quite good at having the odd drink or two. Anyway, I was called Boozy, and he'd suddenly look at me and say, Boozy, when are you going to get your tits out? And I'd sort of smile out of embarrassment, because I didn't know what to do. And this kept happening, and I thought, I can't cope with this actually, because one, I'm not going to do it, and secondly, you know, it's actually very uncomfortable, inappropriate behaviour. So I really wrangled with myself as to how I could deal with that, because here I had 12 men and 2 women, and I think this skipper already felt a little bit intimidated by me, because in the first race I had basically blown the whistle on the first skipper, and had made that happen. And so I was conscious of that, yet I thought I've got to tell him to stop. I wasn't enjoying it. I talked to my other female bunk room mate.
Did they pick on her in the same way, or was you listening to that?
No, she actually fancied the skipper, so there's a very different dynamic going on there. I could write a book, couldn't I? So in the end I decided to try and find the skipper on his own, to have a quiet talk with him and just tell him how I felt. And that's just so powerful really in any situation, because your feelings are very much your own. They cannot be denied. And I just said to him, this is how I feel when you do this. And he said, I didn't mean that, it was just a joke. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but yeah, absolutely, and that's male banter. And I said, I'm sorry, but it doesn't feel like a joke to me. He said, well, that's okay. He said, oh, right, you know, I'll stop doing it. And he went back up on deck, and I'm thinking, he's going to go up there and say, guess what Boozy just said to me? But actually he didn't. And I think because of the way, because of the way that I expressed it.
And you respected his dignity, and you could have put him down in front of everyone, couldn't you?
That's right, but I'm trying to find a private moment on a boat like that. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So he respected me from the point of view that he didn't talk about it, I believe, than anybody else. And it stopped. But you know, for me that was slightly different, because the one thing about that is I couldn't just walk away from it. I felt I needed to confront it really. And I suppose in an organisation, if that were happening, and it does happen, people get bullied, people get intimidated, and there can be some sexual nuances with women at work too. You can walk away, you can resign, or you can do something. That doesn't resolve it.
Yes.
But on that boat, if I did that, it could be a bit fatal, really.